Welcome to the Brave Feminine Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Hamilton, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by Tom Mutch. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. So this is where I get to have conversations with global leaders and we get to dig into their wisdom and perspective on all things life and leadership. So let me share Tom's bio so you know who I'm talking with. So Tom specialises in board, C-suite and senior management appointments across the APAC region. Tom's led board searches for almost everyone, I think, global member-owned organisations, multinational subsidiaries, billion-dollar public and private assets, financial institutions and federal and state government. Before moving to Australia in 2014, Tom spent 10 years as a headhunter in Hong Kong, focused on investment banking and finance, including a stint working for Fidelity in their global talent acquisition team. Before exec search, Tom was an academic, completing his PhD in physics and climate change in 2000 before working as a postdoctoral researcher. And Tom, I know your main focus is about creating pathways between people and opportunities. And we'll get some time talking about your fascinating background. I said to you when we first met, I went out to my NED colleagues and they're a very discerning audience. So it's no mean feat to have come back unanimously as the number one person I should talk to. So love to focus on you first. And then I know you've got some great suggestions that help people build portfolios. But let's get into your story. Who are you as a human being, Tom?
Oh well, look, it's a very expansive question. I think that I'm one of these people that is that has got to where they are accidentally. I think that I didn't set out on this goal to become an investment banking or a boards headhunter back 30, 40 years ago. So it's quite serendipitous that I got to where I am today. But at but at the end of the day, what I do for a living is something that I love, and it's that old adage about find something that you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. So for me, I feel I'm privileged to do the work that I do because I just get to hang out with grown-ups and talk about whatever next looks like. So I'll spare you with the detail of the whole journey, but for me as a person, it is trying to be true to that motto about creating pathways between people and opportunities. It's about approaching conversations from a position of humility and leveraging that intellectual curiosity that is the main theme throughout everything that I've done.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you because there's a fairly disparate kind of, at least on paper. I did my PhD and, off you went in all these directions. What's the thread that kind of connects these different chapters and why are you still not an academic? What went on there?
Well, the thread is intellectual curiosity. I think that when I was finishing school, you choosing what are you going to the career guidance, at school, you could be they said you could be a quantity surveyor, and I had absolutely no idea what that was. And there was no internet. So you had to go to the library and look that up. And I'm thinking, I don't really want to do that. So I chose a subject that I was interested in at the time, which was geology, because as a kid, we used to go on holidays on the train down to Cornwall in the UK, and it's like a geological time machine, thanks to Eisenberg Kingdom Brunel, who built the rail cuttings. And so the further west you go, the older the rocks get. So
Yeah.
I thought that'd be interesting. So there's the intellectual curiosity. And after the undergraduate, I thought the oceans are interesting. So I did a master's in that. And after I finished the master's, I thought, well, how do you pull it all together? And so this was, okay, well, I could do a PhD in this. So without any intention, without any vocation in mind, I didn't want to go into exploration, coal, gold, nothing that I'd been studying. It was just, I'm still curious. So I'm doing my PhD with a fabulous, one of the brightest people I've ever met, young dean of faculty, one of the youngest deans in the UK at the time. And we worked closely together for 3 years in the first instance. And then when I finished my PhD, I was then offered to do a postdoc with that same dean, that same professor.
Mm.
And after about 18 months into that, she said to me, "We need to have a chat." And I said, "Well, what's that about, Barbara?" And she sort of sat me down and she just said, "You need to know that I'm paid the same as a fully qualified train driver."
Wow.
And I think that was her cutting the apron strings. I think she knew, she said, you need to be in this for life and for the right reasons. And I think that was her seeing in me that I was actually destined for something else. And so within 6 months, I was gone. And so that's, one of the first, we're not supposed to use the word pivot because it's been made redundant after COVID, but it was one of the first pivots in my life. I don't think I could be an academic. So what do you do? And so some serendipity comes my way, and I get this dream job working as a lecturer on a sail training program in the Caribbean for a couple of years. And throughout my postdoc PhD and the trip to the Caribbean, I'd had a partner that was based in Hong Kong,
Mm.
or from Hong Kong. And at the end of the Caribbean first year and a half, I decided that it was okay. I'm moving to Hong Kong to make a go of it, to settle down with this individual, and as dumb luck would have it, COVID 1.0 struck. So SARS, if you remember,
I do.
Amoy Gardens, it's all very familiar now. Public transport, everyone all deserted, face masks, and so I had hoped to be an academic,
Mm.
but in Hong Kong just to do something different, just to almost Dick Whittington style, just go and explore. But of course, all the universities were closed,
Yeah.
so I had to reconsider my options, and so I went back to the Caribbean to that job for 9 months, and went back to Hong Kong, newly single. Still can't work out to this day why she didn't wait for me. But then it was another one of these fundamental shifts in mindset. What do you do now? You're going to be in Hong Kong. So I started speaking to people in my network. So again, this is the intellectual curiosity kicking in again. What could Tom do? So I'm speaking to people in my network. I am exploring what do they do for a living? What gets them out of bed in the morning? How did they get to where they are today? What iterative steps did they go through to get to where they are in their career? And the light bulb moment for me was really, really simple. Having spoken to the bankers, the lawyers, the accountants, and the headhunters that were all there. Headhunters get paid to ask the same questions.
Yes.
Perhaps I could do this for a living, and actually I still get to feed that intellectual curiosity, but actually in a completely different country, in a completely different space. And if you're in Hong Kong, then clearly you want to be doing investment banking, headhunting. And so I worked out what I felt was the best organization doing it at the time. And I called the CEO and I said, I'd like an interview, please. And he agreed, and it turns out that he happened to have a PhD in a completely useless subject as well. So we talked about that as the interview,
Clicked.
and like I said, intellectual curiosity. We talked about books that we were reading. We talked about the etymology of words and language, and just we hit it off. And so that was my first ever job. He offered me the job that night, and it was the weekend before the Hong Kong Rugby Sevens in 2004.
Hmm.
And I said, "Can I start on Wednesday?" And he said yes. So one of the best weekends of my life.
Fantastic. Nothing like going to the rugby knowing that you've got this job lined up on the back of it. So
Oh,
enjoy.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Tom, so lots of things to focus on there, but the first one I can't help but ask, is that something that you offer people advice on, that they should ring the CEO and inquire?
Yes, I mean
Yeah.
it is, but I think it has to be in context.
Yeah.
I think that when that CEO said, "Why should I give you an interview?" I was unapologetic when I said, "Well, because you should do."
Mm.
But in my mind, I'd already gone through the thinking. I'd already rationalized why I should have a conversation with them. I had a clear understanding of what I felt I brought to the table. I had a clear understanding of how I could get to this individual, so it's
Yeah.
leveraging my network.
Yeah.
And I had a clear understanding of why I was interested in his organization. I
Mm.
understood the competitive landscape. I understood the challenges that they faced. I'd done my homework. So for me, I'd rationalized that.
Yeah. Good to
So
go.
so 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 long as the context is right, don't pick up the phone willy-nilly because you'll just get told no very quickly. But if there is that context, then yes.
Mm. So SARS, Hong Kong,
Yeah.
SARS, you then have been through GFCs along the way, and that sort of, well, dare I use the word pivot again, but that may have provided another opportunity for change then, or?
Oh, look, I think some learning from me, but also I think that the most influential period, other than of course meeting my wife and having children there, but um, for me was I was one of these people that used to walk around Hong Kong with an air of hubris,
Yeah.
saying, I only work with the top two investment banks like Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, and Lehman Brothers, which is true. I did until in late 2008 when all three had been vaporized.
Mm.
Cardboard boxes, walking out of the offices, those were my clients. And I found my diary absolutely rammed full of, in particular in sort of October, November 2008, Lehman Brothers managing directors and APAC regional heads, who I'd been trying to get into the diaries of for years because
Yeah.
those were the search givers. And I was representing Barclays at the time, Barclays Capital, to try and prevent them all from signing the Nomura deal. And I just thought, I'm going to make a mozza here. This
Yeah.
is going to be a cash cow for me because I'm going to get all these Lehman MDs to sign. And after about a day and a half, I had this epiphany that actually this was not about making money. This is about pastoral care.
Yeah.
This is about speaking to people that were broken.
Yeah.
You know, she, he, they were a long way from home, highly leveraged, kids in school, um, had absolutely no idea that the walls of financial Jericho were collapsing.
Yeah.
And it was just this exercise in reassuring people that actually you're going to be okay. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you'll get through this. We can get through this. And so for me, that was a real light bulb moment again, because it fundamentally changed my approach. And this is what underpins my mindset still to this day: is you're talking with people. Don't ever forget that you're talking with people. Don't ever turn this conversation into a transaction where the person on the other line is a commodity, because then
Mm.
you've fundamentally forgotten your purpose. And of course, then for me, a short period of time later, all my clients had disappeared. And
Mm.
so I had a newborn, a 2-month-old daughter. I didn't know what next looked like. Um, and that was a challenging time as well. And so I started to um, pull together a go-to-market strategy that helped me get over the barriers, the things that prevented me or cope with the uncertainty. Um, and so, the first lesson was you'll be okay. It won't
Yeah.
be easy, but you'll get through it. And the second thing for me was I always felt deeply uncomfortable about picking up the phone to people and saying, "Can you help?" When
Mm.
in my mind it was about finding a job.
Yes.
There was this ick. And I'm just going, I can't, I don't, there's something holding me back. And I knew that there was something holding me back. And so it sounds remarkably simple, but for me, the solution was don't make it about looking for a job.
Yeah.
Just make it about enhancing your network, creating some fellowship, sharing some insights. Pick up the phone, email someone. You're free for a coffee. It's not about looking for a job, is it, Tom? Not at all. This is about enhancing my network, creating some fellowship. And it's funny because that hurdle kind of dissolved. And the other thing was impetus. You needed to keep going. And so back in the olden days, when you had a screensaver that would bounce around your screen and
Yes.
you could write words in it. So
Yeah.
I changed mine to pop up after 30 seconds and it simply said, call them now.
Oh, that's
And so
great.
if you pause and you think and you're there for a minute and then it pops up, called, oh, damn, yeah, I should do it right. So there's the impetus to keep going, which I had to search for and had to remind myself because sometimes you can get distracted, but
Mm.
also this, it's going to be okay.
I love that. I love the little call them now screensaver. Do you have something you use now? Like, you don't have the word popping around the screen now. Do you have something that pops up for you now?
Um, no, I think that I've been doing this for over 2 decades now, and I think that the mindset, intellectual curiosity, just it's always there. I'm going, if I find myself sat at my desk going, I'm not doing anything right now. I have in my mind the screensaver saying call them now, but it's
Yeah.
what else could you be doing?
Yeah.
And so if I ever have spare capacity, not that there's terribly much of it these days, but what I look for is how else can I be contributing?
Yeah.
So next week, Monday next week, giving a presentation to the women on boards about pathway to the boardroom specifically. I'm always listening out for whatever's top of mind in the board directors that I'm speaking to. And if I hear the same thing 2 or 3 times that I've never heard before,
Mm.
I'm going to create an insights article or a thought leadership piece. Because if I'm hearing it for the first time and I hear it 2 or 3 times, I reckon there'll be other people out there that might be interested. And so you'll see me, authoring different insights and articles that come out probably 3 or 4 every year, for several years now. So it's innate in me that I'm always looking to use the grey matter in different ways, as well as spending time one-on-one with people as clients, candidates, and aspirational non-exec directors.
What's got your attention right now? So you might not have the article published or anything, but what is there a pattern you've been hearing lately?
There is. We host a series of lunches. I just host a series of lunches around the different states and territories in Australia and across the region. So we've been in Singapore and South Australia, Perth, Melbourne. We've got Brisbane coming up. And we're always asking the people in those events what's top of mind in the boardroom.
Mm.
And I always try and be incredibly smart and predict what's going to be top of mind in that state on that day. And the standing joke is I've never got it right. Until recently, when I've started to get it right in the last 3 or 4 months. So before the last 3 or 4 months, every state and territory is slightly different. So New South Wales, relentless in the pursuit of performance. Melbourne, proud of its heritage and its institutional old school DNA. South Australia, bit of imposter syndrome. WA, always a really strong focus on First Nations, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples, more so by an order of magnitude than anywhere else that we speak to.
Mm.
There's always a subtle difference. And yet in the last 3 months, what I've started to see, the reason I've been getting it right is because everyone's saying the same thing. Everyone's talking about tariffs, about macroeconomics, geopolitics, AI. These are the themes. And so it's not that I'm getting smarter, it's just that the challenges are becoming more ubiquitous.
Yes.
Everyone's thinking about the same thing, as
Mm.
opposed to people are responding in their own different states and territory, their own geographies.
Mm.
So I think that's what's top of mind for us right now is the uncertainty around the macroeconomics and geopolitics,
Does it
and
change what
AI.
you're doing? So, in terms of looking for C-suite CEOs and NEDs, does it change who you're looking for? Does it change anything about the dynamics of the work you
Not
do?
not in Australia, not at the
Okay.
moment. And the reason I say not in Australia is because in my experience, um, um, Australia can be, and I tread lightly here because clearly I'm not Australian, but Australia can be quite inward looking.
Yes.
And in my experience, there tends to be a propensity to not recognize or appreciate international perspectives or global experience.
Mm.
And this is validated almost every single time I'm speaking to someone from the Australian diaspora who's coming home or is recently got back to Australia. And they tell me these stories about banging their head against the brick wall because nobody appreciates global or international perspectives.
Yes.
And so um, the macroeconomics and geopolitics aspect tends to not be impacting the the way that those directors are being measured in Australia. I think
Mm.
that in Southeast Asia in particular, where I've been doing a bit of work, is we are starting to see this propensity for Singaporean based. And Singapore Inc., you've got Monetary Authority MAS, GIC, Temasek that run a lot of those boards
Mm.
or institutions. They've been very inward looking as well. But now we're starting to have conversations with those organizations saying we need people from across the APAC region or going west towards Europe or
Yes.
even to the US because they realize that they have been rather myopic and they need to diversify. So it's 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 manifested differently in different geographies.
It's interesting I ask because, I work with a lot of CEOs and it's that tension between all the things you've got to fix internally, but having enough of a lens externally, wherever that may be, to actually not miss opportunities as well. So
Yeah.
it's no surprise to me when you talk about that from a board point of view. Tom, you have a lot of people come to you kind of saying that they're keen to look for board roles. So not just boards asking you to find people, you've got the reverse.
Yeah.
How do you know, and you and I had a brief chat about this when we first met, but how do you know that someone's truly ready to actually make that step versus just thinking that they're ready?
It's a really good question. I think in the first instance, it's the language that they use.
Hmm.
It's their thinking and it's their motivation. And I think, I do speak to people. I've probably spoken to I don't know, half a dozen people this week already around, why do you want to be on a board?
Mm.
What's your motivation? People that say, oh, I've got a bit of spare capacity, or I've got one coming off and I'm looking for another one. That's one of my pet hates.
Yes.
I don't want it to be circumstantial. I want it to be, I've got an opportunity. It comes back to me phoning up the CEO back in Hong Kong when I was fresh off the boat. Why are you here? Why are you interested in this organization? You've got to have a really clear understanding. And so, if people don't have aren't able to clearly articulate why they're interested, their motivation, acknowledging that it can be hard work, acknowledging that there are risks associated with being on boards, this is something that I think is often missing in the people that I speak to. And I think that I think I was speaking a long time ago to one of the former heads of AICD who, and this is before I moved to Australia, who simply said, just make sure you've got skin in the game. It's got to be an organization you're interested in for the right reasons, not just because you happen to have a skill that they're looking for.
Mm.
Because you want to wake up in the morning and look at your diary and not go, oh, it's them again. So I think that's really, really important for me. I think that the language is also important because if people aren't able to demonstrate the language of directors, that strategic mindset that you're looking for, that ability to be able to influence and collaborate and help. I'm going to sound like a classic consultant, sort of high horizon setting.
Yeah.
People that are too operational, people that are too keen to stay at the executive coalface and influence directly at an executive level. I think they need to do a bit of thinking as well. And there's also those that don't really understand what the purpose is of a board and what good governance best practice looks like. So perhaps those that haven't done any formal governance training, those are the sorts of things that I'm looking for when I'm having a conversation. So someone who understands the motivation, understands what they bring to the table, which is wrapped up in their brand, and then understands what next could look like for them. What could be on what I refer to as their blueprint, their sort of their universe of opportunities or their mind map for tomorrow. I'm not saying people have to be able to be specific in giving me directions towards I want to be on the board of Qantas, I want to be on the board of a public sector organization or whatever. It's not about that. It's just about being able to articulate what it is that you bring to the table. What's your proposition? What's your skill set? What's your mindset? And many people don't get that well, as evidenced by me testing them when I first meet them.
So tell me about that because you spoke to me about this sort of moment of making someone uncomfortable for 30 seconds. Like tell me about that. It sounds lovely.
You're making me sound like a sadist. One of the things that I do when I meet, and it does depend on which way the wind's blowing and whether or not I'm in a good mood, or if I feel someone could benefit from it. But I will give a hypothetical scenario to an individual, and I will say to them, "Okay, let's just pretend we've met at a conference, um, and I'm running late, and I walk in, and you're in the corner talking to Sally and Jim, who I know, and you're in the middle with your name tag, and I say, hypothetical situation, I say to you, G'day, Sally, what do you do for a crust? And I say to this person, give me your 30-second elevator pitch. Now, go. And I do that a lot. And anyone that's heard me do it or been around me doing it will appreciate what I'm saying, but probably 90% of the people that I speak to go, you
Yeah.
mean now? And I'll go 32, 21, 15. And they'll regurgitate their business card or they'll just sort of give me something that's hastened. And that's when I say to them, look, time out, that's the nastiest you'll ever see me. But if you could imagine walking out of this room and bumping into the chair of the board of your dream organization who's talking to a girlfriend of yours, and the chair says to you, what do you do for a crust?
Yeah.
On the continuum of you starting on this journey and you being ready to ace that conversation, where do you see yourself? And what I want that person to do, which is why I'm deliberate in trying to at least make them feel slightly uncomfortable, is say to me, I don't think I'm ready.
Mm.
And that's when I'll say, well, look, I'm inclined to agree, but let's explore that. What does ready look like? And so I think that people that aren't able to articulate to me a brand that encapsulates their motivation, their mindset, their skill set, and do so in a way that's sufficiently engaging, that makes it easy for that chair to remember them,
Yes.
um, then I think that that person is going to be the person that I'm speaking to at that point in time is going to be the person that in 6 months' time comes back to me and says, "Always the bridesmaid, never the bride, pip to the post, second again," because they're wasting every single opportunity they are where they can leverage their brand and really sell themselves. And people that start their elevator pitch with "I'm passionate about," everybody says that. People that say "I'm a strategic thinker, I'm a solver of problems, I'm an agent of change," everybody says that. So you need to
We
think
all
really, really
are, of course.
carefully.
We all are, of course.
Well, absolutely. Everyone's, 20-year overnight success. You wouldn't be in the room if you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But if everybody's saying the same thing, how are you going to differentiate yourself? That's the real question, because and it's only you as an individual can answer that, because um, it's a competitive market and everyone's working on their brand and they're all trying to compete for the same opportunities, the same roles. And so if you don't bring your A game, you're going to come second.
So, Tom, it compels me to kind of ask, and this probably puts you on the spot a little bit, but it's like, are there any that have been really memorable? Like, if can something come to mind where, and it may be that you've worked with someone to get them to this point, but what does a memorable one sound like? People find this extraordinarily hard to um,
There's that
elevator pitch themselves.
there are many individuals that are memorable, but the way that my brain works, despite the fact that I've got more letters after my name than I've got in it, I'm actually as thick as two short planks. This is the sort of come to Jesus moment. Um, and people say that, I'm sure that can't be true, Tom. You've got a PhD. Well, that's just lots of numbers for 3 years. But actually sitting down with individuals and hearing their stories, reading their CVs, believe it or not, that information doesn't sit in my memory.
Yeah.
And so, what I try and do is I try and get people to think or to articulate what is their brand in a way that allows me to help in that moment more than remembering them in 5 months, a year's time when I happen to be working on a mandate and I go, "Oh, I've spoken to that person before." And so I talk to people about a brand that I talk about this sort of cake recipe with 4 ingredients. And those ingredients can wax and wane depending on the audience. Because when you introduced me, you talked about, Tom creates pathways between people and opportunities. This is how I talk about myself. And I won't bore you with the details about how we came to that, but it was a long process. And I think that from my perspective, that is something that I still continue to use. How do I create those pathways? I do it by being open, insightful, and candid. This is part of my elevator pitch. When I'm speaking to other people, it's the cake recipe with those 4 ingredients that are historical. So where have you come from? Everyone gets that bit right. It's the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
There's the contemporary. What are you up to today? Where's your head at? What's occupying your time? There's the personal. People strangely seem to have a pathological aversion um, um, to talking about themselves as an individual when they're doing that sort of pitch process.
Yes.
And that for me is the fun bit. I like Victorians read the newspaper from back to front. I read CVs from the bottom up, because when people talk about the fact that they went backpacking in India 25 years ago, when I meet that individual, the first question I'm going to ask them is, what's their favorite city in India?
Yeah. Beautiful.
So that for me, so I think that the personal thing, I don't care if it's underwater cooking, extreme Scrabble, porcelain corgis, don't care. Um, but something, because it allows you to differentiate. And the last piece is actually, I will say one thing about the differentiation piece. For me, it helps make the brand. It's like when you go for a walk in the bush and you're getting in the car afterwards and you're picking seeds off your jersey and you're going, "Where'd that come from?" You've been carrying it with you subconsciously. That for me is what a good brand is. People carry it with them subconsciously until they're sat around the board table talking about board succession events, and they're going to go, "Actually, have you ever thought about Sally?
Yeah.
Sally who? Sally, I met her a couple of months ago." And so they'll look her up. So it becomes a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that the brand is easier to remember. So that's why I like the personal bit.
Yeah.
And the bit that everybody, or almost everybody, misses, that I think is probably the most important of those four: aspiration.
Mm.
You speak to people, you listen to those 30-second elevator pitches when I'm saying, sell me. You read people's social media profiles, and I'm not saying that it's the be all and end all, but LinkedIn is everywhere and is accessed by many, many people. Look at the profiles. Very few people talk about what next might look like. They almost feel as if they shouldn't do because it might mean someone can see what they're trying to do. But I tell you, I love reading and hearing about people's aspirations. So, what are the most memorable was the question. It's the people that are able to blend the historical, contemporary, personal, and aspirational,
Mm.
because that's the sort of thing that makes it easier for me to then help that individual on the day, which is when I go, oh, actually, you know who I think you'll get on with? That's the sort of the natural
Yes.
way that my brain works, as opposed to hoping in the dumb luck or serendipity every year's time I'm working on a mandate that you might be interested in. For me, it's more impactful helping people that can do that. The really best brands are the ones that I actually do remember 12
Yes.
months, 12 months later, a year and a half later, where I'm going, who was that person? I do remember that person. And then I look them up and it's absolutely fantastic. Love the profile. And quite often those are the people that get the job.
I love what you said about the people have the aversion to the personal. I mean, something that I do with groups sometimes is I'll get them to prepare almost like a brand flat lay, like a very personal, give me 5 objects that represent you, who you are, tell the story, like not a photo, a thing. So they've
Mm.
got to get into something about themselves. And then immediately after it, get them to give me their elevator pitch. And always the elevator pitch is stilted, written to be read, like it's come straight off a CV page. It
Mm.
uses all the buzzwords. And it's like, how do you blend those two? Like, you got to give something of you in that elevator pitch. So I love that you brought up the personal as well. It matters.
Yeah,
Uh,
it does. I mean, I've been through those similar exercises where it's you can imagine that some consultant comes in and sits down with a group of people and puts a whole bunch of photographs on the table and says, choose one that represents you. And there were lots of vibrant, bright sunflowers and country scenery, the likes as well. And I just picked out this black and white photograph of I think it was a classroom. And the person was saying to me, so why does this represent you? And I said, well, look, because at the end of the day, when we're long dead and buried, the only thing that we're going to leave behind is what we taught people and how we were remembered,
mm.
unless you happen to be able to design a pyramid, which is not terribly many people. And that really, really resonated with the consultant, because I think they said, where did you read that? Who wrote that first? And I looked at them quizzically and said, well, me. That's what I think, and I think that if we can leave a legacy and be mindful of the shadow that we cast in everything that we do, then we'll be better people. That's certainly one of the things that I'm mindful of when I'm having these coffees with individuals on a daily basis.
What's the biggest myth about board appointments that you think even experienced execs believe?
That it's easy.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard work, and as I said, there's risks associated with it. Um, there's risks both from a sort of performance perspective, but also from getting giving your best self, being able to find ways to contribute, being able um, uh, to really have some sense of giving a direction. I think that's yeah, it's that it's not easy. Not easy to get them. That's a no. That's a given, because as I've already said, it's a competitive process, and there are others that want the same roles.
Mhm.
But yeah, but it's not easy work.
Who makes the best board directors?
People that aren't afraid to ask the stupid question.
Mm.
I think, again, intellectual curiosity. It's a theme. Can you tell?
Yes.
I think those that are unapologetic in putting up their hand. And again, another life lesson I had, it was back in Hong Kong, and we were having quarterly presentations, and someone was going through a PowerPoint, and they were talking about all sort of investment banking, 3-letter acronyms, all sorts of stuff that no one really understood. And the CEO said, "Can you go back one slide, please, to the presenter?" And then the CEO said, "Who can tell me what the acronyms are on the ordinate and the abscissa on that graph?" And nobody in the room could actually answer what we'd just been presented.
Yeah,
And
wow.
he was understandably ropeable. He just said, Why are you not asking? If you don't know, why are you not asking?" And I was, slightly embarrassed as well, because as a former academic, I knew I didn't know what they were. I
Yeah,
didn't want to put my hand up because I didn't want to be the stupid person in the room.
no.
Nobody in the room knew. Nobody. And so, yeah, I think the best directors are those that are. I mean, clearly you have to do your own due diligence. You have to read the papers. Don't
Yes.
use AI to do it for you and do a summary, please. It's the onus is on you to do the reading. And if you don't understand it, find the right way of asking that question, whether it's an in-camera conversation or it's formally being tabled um, during the board meeting itself. Ask the question. Don't be a specialist. How many boards have got lawyers and accountants on, or increasingly with having the conversation around AI and digital specialists, but they only speak when it's their chosen specialist subject. You can't afford to have that. There's no spare seats on board, or there's no seats for specialists. You can outsource that. What you need to do is you need to be comfortable contributing all the time across everything that's being discussed. So be comfortable being a generalist, even if you do have expertise, and be comfortable asking the stupid questions, because there'll be other people that want to do it too.
I'm interested in your perspective on when you ask people to consider board roles. And, I hear this different advice. Some people say start early, get involved in boards, build up your kind of board cred. And then some very experienced board directors who've said stay an executive for as long as you can. You'll add so much more value to the organisation and, broadly to yourself by staying an exec as long as you can to get as senior as you can.
Look, I mean, there's different approaches to um, being on boards, and historically, what you would do is, people's careers tended to be, well, I used to say quite binary in Hong Kong when I was up there. You learn and you do, then you lead and you teach, and that's it.
Mm.
Junior executive, senior executive, and then I come to Australia, and there's this sort of third trimester of the non-executive conversation. Um, but historically, that tended to be the purview of the septuagenarian, let's be honest, white-haired,
Yes.
white-skinned male, and that's all you did. You were on boards.
Mm.
We're now starting to see an increase in people that are considering what we call a plural career, a bit of executive and non-executive at the same time. And clearly, there's conversations to be had around whether or not your employer is comfortable giving you 12,
Yeah.
18 days off a year to go and do something different. My view is that you end up with a better executive if you have a bit of both. You are an executive plus you're doing something in the boardroom. Certainly aligns you better with the mindset of your own board. And it also taps into any spare capacity you've got as an individual. So I think that we're actually seeing a shift of broad perspectives around what does a portfolio look like? Can you be a pure executive? Can you be a plural, which is executive and non-executive, or can you just be a portfolio non-exec director? But at the end of the day, if you want to be on boards, there's no time like the present.
Yeah.
All you have to do is, when I talk about brand, historical, contemporary, personal, aspirational, if your aspiration is to be on boards at some point in futures, even if it's a decade's time, have the conversations now. Start speaking to board directors, start listening to the language that they use, because board language is different to executive language.
Mm.
Start picking up on the cues, start doing your own due diligence, consider doing some formal governance training. AICD do a very good job of convincing the world that they're the only one, but they are very good at what they do. There are
Right.
other organizations. There's Governance Institute and micro credentialing elsewhere. But like I said, there's no time like the present, because in my experience, people that have fantastic portfolios today, they're the ones that say that they've only ever been tapped on the shoulder and they don't really know how they got it, but subconsciously they've been doing all of those things. They've had a strong brand. They've been leveraging it in their network. They have a sense of what next might look like. They've been using the aspirational language of wanting to be on boards 2 decades ago. Ergo, you've got a great portfolio now, and it's actually not an accident.
That's great. That really unlocks that for people, as far as that intentional things you can do along the way.
Mm.
Tom, fabulous. I've got so many more questions, but I just want to say there's a real drive I can hear for you in terms of wanting to actually support potential non-executive directors as much as there is about boards. And you explained some of it, I think, through that human element that you went through with the GFC earlier. But where does that drive come from? It's rare, and I think this is the feedback I would share from a lot of my NED colleagues. It's rare to find people who are happy looking to help candidates.
People that aren't happy to help candidates are myopic, in my
Mm.
opinion. Because I have been having conversations one-on-one with aspirant non-exec directors now for a long time. And what I what I hope to achieve is a new relationship with a solid foundation that starts from the position of trust.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, those that treat these conversations as transactions where you're a commodity
Yes.
and I want to put a cover letter on your CV back in Hong Kong when we were covering banking, you'd put a 12-month date stamp on it. You're mine. And
Yeah.
if that company takes you, they pay me.
Mm.
That's how brutal it was.
Mm.
And so I'm very happy to have the conversation. I'm very happy to give people complete control over where their information goes. I'm very happy to ask the question, well, first of all, it's where are you at on your journey? And then it's if Tom can help, what might that look like? That for me it's almost a traditional way of building that relationship on trust because I can pretty much guarantee you that, actually, I can guarantee you that in a year or 2 or 3 years' time, a lot of those people are going to be on 2 or 3 boards and they're going to be making decisions about that organization's trajectory. They're going to be, if it's a good relationship, they're going to be advocating for me. They're going to be speaking to other board directors who have other boards of their own. And um, and for me, it's about playing the long game. So is there a commercial element to what I do? Yeah, absolutely. There's not some misplaced sense of benevolence in me. Um, but I do want to, so it's fortunate that I do enjoy creating those pathways and
Yes.
wanting to contribute because for me, it's not work. I genuinely enjoy the conversations that I have. But in terms of that commercial imperative, one thing that we don't like in what we do is when someone says, look, you come highly regarded, but there was someone on the board that had never heard of you. So
Right.
unfortunately, we can't use you on this occasion. Well, one board at a time.
Yeah.
We're ultimately we're de-risking our own go-to-market strategy by at least being known and in a positive way. So yeah, that's a happy adjunct to what I already do. Um, but at the end of the day, it all all paths lead to Rome. For me, it's about helping to create those pathways and knowing that the more work that I do placing people onto boards, the more people I get to meet. So hopefully I'll be doing this for another 2 decades.
I was going to ask your aspiration, but you answered that. Is there one beyond doing this for the next 2 decades?
Oh, living back in the Caribbean would be nice, but
Oh, particularly
um,
today. It's freezing here in Melbourne.
but perhaps there's another thesis in me, or perhaps a book. Everyone's got a novel in them, I think. But no, there's no delusions of adequacy on my part. The fact that if people choose to listen to me, then that I'm flattered. I think it's about continuing the work that we're doing. I mean, clearly as an organization, Odgers is not a very well-known brand in Australia, but directionally we're moving further and further into the listed space. We've been doing a lot of work in the private and PE-backed and government, and within that broad church of charity and not-for-profit and sport. So we have bold aspirations to continue what we're doing and to continue expanding. So lots and lots of unfinished work. And that's great for me because that means that I get to continue working the grey matter. Intellectual curiosity, I've probably said that 3 or 4 times today, but um, so yeah, so I'm loving the journey.
Final question, Tom, that I ask of everybody is what does brave feminine leadership mean to you, and do you think it needs to change?
I think there needs to be more of it. And the reason I say that is because if I look at those where we talked about the pivot points, the most influential transitions in my career, moving from academia to search, trying Hong Kong first time and it not working, going back to Hong Kong, meeting my wife, having some coaching around what is my brand, and when I first arrived in Australia, and then ultimately the person that helped me and brought me into Odgers, it's all amazing women.
Mm.
They've been my influence, and so that's set me on a journey of why is there such disparity from a gender perspective on boards? And so intellectual curiosity, I'm speaking to every director I can, but is there a bias towards women? Yes, it's deliberate, it's not an accident. And I'm consistently confronted by elevated levels of humility, this imposter syndrome in the most amazing board candidates, potential or otherwise, many of whom are women. Disproportionate number of women have imposter syndrome, and I think that where we can talk about why that exists, it's potentially a dangerous subject to go into. But my view is that there's been this sort of manifest repression of opportunities given to women over, frankly, millennia. And so now, as we see the swingometer going more aggressively towards appointing women to boards, I think it's brilliant. Any man that complains about that, unlucky, you've had your go. The way that we reach parity is to go hard the other way quicker, not from a quota perspective, but actually just having conversations with amazing potential or future board directors around what makes you amazing, and being unapologetic about telling other people what makes you amazing. What does the market say I'm famous for? What are my signature capabilities? How can I contribute? And so if we can see more bravery, more courage from that perspective, it's just brave leadership, about feminine or otherwise. But it's the gender, it's addressing the gender imbalance in boards by having conversations with amazing people who have elevated levels of imposter syndrome, who are disproportionately women.
Tom, thank you so much for joining the conversation. It's been brilliant spending time with you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.